So how would you like to follow that? I'm Rodger Price. I'm the founding partner of Leading by Design. And before we get into too far into this evening, I want to share one more time. I've been involved with Steak and Burger from a periphery for 25 years, actually 26 years because we skipped one. And I know that many on the committee that pulls this together and finds speakers, they've been doing this for 25 years. I see Pat Postma and Tom and the Reeds and others, and I couldn't get the mic without saying it's so amazing what you do each year. So I want one more round of applause for the committee. I'm guessing that there are some of you in the audience tonight that have been at over a dozen of these. And you probably have some of your favorites. Some of mine are Evander Holyfield. There were some baseball greats, Jack Morris, and one of my favorites, Ernie Harwell, one year. That was so cool. There was the gold medal Olympian Dominique Dawes. Some of you might remember her. There was the Harlem Globetrotter legend, Curly Neal. And certainly some football greats, a very intimidating person, Mike Singletary. I'm sure he's just a wonderful, soft-hearted guy, but man, his eyes when I sat across the table from him, it's like, do not mess with this guy. U of M's football coach, Lloyd Carr, and a U of M tight end that became an NFL tight end that comes from almost our backyard in Zeeland, Jay Riemersma. I could go on and on. There's a tennis player that was fun that we had many years ago. But when I think about Kirk Cousins, I think maybe he's the best one we've ever had. And yeah, let's go ahead. So thank you, committee, for bringing him in. And it's not only because he is an amazing quarterback in the NFL, and he's an amazing man. Enough of us know, enough of people that know him well, he's an amazing man. But he comes from our own backyard. In fact, we are literally on his turf. True.
Yeah, somewhat.
So I want to just give a quick word about Leading by Design and why we felt like we had to be one of the presenting sponsors this evening. And thank you, Fifth Third, who's been the presenting sponsor for almost 20 years alone. And yet we get Kirk Cousins like, ooh, we want to be also. And so Bradford and us, because of your graciousness, that you said, yeah, we can share the limelight. Here's why we felt we had to be. Leading by Design exists so that West Michigan can realize a potential that we believe it has, and that's to be to leadership what Nashville is to country music. Nashville's special for country music. We really believe that West Michigan is already a special place for leaders, and we can be even better. So when I knew that Kirk Cousins was our speaker, it's like, he's iconic as a great leader. You really are. Yeah, you might, as most great leaders, like, oh shucks. But I remember your Big Ten speech 10 years ago or more than that. Amazing. And so we said, we have to be part of this. This represents who we are and what we do. And I'm thrilled to be able to be the person that gets to do some Q&A with Kirk tonight. We're also going to pick out a few of you in the audience to ask a question or two of him as well. So give him another big, warm welcome to his first Holland Area Steak and Burger dinner.
Thanks, Rodger. Thank you. Pretty impressive to memorize that speech. You're well on your way to being an attorney. Well on your way.
So, was there anything that I royally messed up in that you want to clean up?
I don't own the turf, but I did make some great memories here, so absolutely.
So what is one of your memories on this field?
There were a lot. The one that jumps out to me first and foremost was my senior year. Holland Christian had just started a football program when we moved to Holland. If they didn't have a football program, I wasn't going to be going to Holland Christian. And so they had just started the program. As a result, we were kind of figuring out what it looked like to be a good, strong varsity program. My senior year was kind of our chance to make the playoffs and kind of say, all right, we're that team. And our third game that year, we were 2-0, and we were playing a real team. It was coming in to play. And we knew that was going to kind of be a statement game. And we ended up playing them, getting to overtime. On 4th and 20, from the 20, we completed it. To be down by 1, we decided to go for 2 to win the game. And we hit that to win the game. And the whole student section came running on the field, and my dad came running off the sideline and gave him a big hug. And he said to me, you know, that's why you work so hard for moments like that. And I'll never forget that. And so awesome. Even through college, even through the pros, I don't know that anything will top that overtime win against Greenville here at Holland Christian in 2006. That's awesome. Yep.
So you probably know that Kirk then went on. So he broke his ankle as a junior, which put him kind of behind in the recruiting game. And late in that game, a brand new coach at Michigan State, Mark D'Antonio, said, you know what, we want to give you a spot.
That's right.
So Kirk becomes the starting quarterback as a sophomore, junior and senior. His junior year led the team to co-Big Ten championship and a Final Four spot. We won't talk about what happened, so I'm just glad you're alive. When I watched that game, Alabama is like a whole different deal. So
that's right.
His senior year, he led the team to the inaugural Big Ten championship game. And there's this guy, Russell Wilson, who plays for, I don't know, some team out west. Yeah, Seattle Seahawks. Made an unbelievable play late in the game so that they could barely beat you for the Big Ten championship. Any memories of that?
Oh, yeah.
He's a great guy.
If you talk to my dad, he'll go on and on about the referee who dropped the flag on a roughing the punter call that ended the game. My dad still hasn't gotten over that one. I said, Dad, you got to move on. It's a decade later. I'm still playing Russell Wilson. We've got games to go. He said, but that call was just so bad. So, yeah, that was, you know, I say to this day, I've had some gut-wrenching losses, some on this field. I think that Big Ten championship game loss was probably the most gut-wrenching I've had to date. So hopefully, you know, if we get in a big moment like that again, we don't lose them. But if we play in a big enough game to lose where it's just as gut-wrenching, then I'd say, you know, we've had a good run.
Well, aren't you happy I brought it up so you could relive it again?
Part of the deal.
So then in 2012, he was drafted into the NFL in the 4th round. Behind, in the 1st round, a Heisman Trophy winner, RG3. Anybody know who RG3 is? Robert Griffin III. Give that man a cookie. Awesome. We got a fan back there.
Yeah, we should keep the quizzes coming.
It didn't take long for Kirk to become the starting quarterback. And it didn't take long after that for him to be Offensive Player of the Week a few times. And statistically, maybe not publicity-wise, but statistically, he became a top 10 quarterback, you know, probably 3 years into it. In 2018, he signed a contract after a couple years of, you know, I won't say that, so of trying to get away, but they did the, what's that called?
The old franchise deal.
The old franchise deal where he wasn't allowed to leave, but at least they paid him a little bit of money. But when he signed this deal in 2018, it was the largest paying contract in NFL history. So he's probably pretty good. And he's been with Minnesota now how many years?
Coming up with my 4th year.
4th year. Yeah. Next year, he's going to win the Super Bowl. So remember this night.
Right. Speak it into existence.
Speak it into existence. Say it and play it.
That's right. I like that.
And so, I mean, it's just so cool. If you're a football fan at all, it's just so cool to sit here with Kirk Cousins. If you're a fan of great people, it's so cool to sit here with Kirk Cousins. And again, we're about leadership. I'm just thrilled to be able to talk some leadership with you, maybe, but a lot of football.
Thrilled to be here.
So minicamp. What the heck is minicamp? And when did you get back?
Yeah, it's exactly as the name sounds. It's a mini camp. So we have training camp in August, and for a week in June, they basically simulate training camp for 3 days. And that's kind of our last hurrah to our spring football session. So we just finished yesterday. We actually showed up, got in the building about 6:45 yesterday morning, and at about 7:30, Coach Zimmer comes in and says, I canceled practice today. You guys can go home for the summer. So we ended up getting a little bit of an early departure and got back here yesterday afternoon. And this is the highlight of my year. I spend the next month right here in West Michigan, nowhere else I'd rather be, and so I've got a lot to look forward
Beautiful.
to.
Look for him in Meyer. Usually not sure what aisle he's in, looking for something.
Certainly on 8th Street. You'll see me walking up and down 8th Street for sure.
So I see, as I studied more about you, I see that your wife, Julie's, and your foundation supports the Boys and Girls Clubs of America.
Yeah.
Tell me, I mean, there's only about 1,000 worthy causes that you can support. Why Boys and Girls Clubs of America?
Well, it's a pretty easy decision for us. The fact that there's a chapter located right here in Holland, multiple sites really, it's such a natural fit. There's so many campuses in Minneapolis and St. Paul as well. And I just believe so strongly in reaching people at a young age, giving them an opportunity, a place to go, to be constructive, to get to know one another outside of school. I look back and see all the time that I spent after school, how productive that time was in my development as a person, athletically and otherwise, to create a space for people to go and to be together and have programming. I just think is so valuable, and so it's a tremendous asset to our community, certainly to Twin Cities, and just a no-brainer for us to get behind and want to support it.
Thank you. Have you been to any other steak and burger dinners?
This is my first one, nice. And it's been very positive, very good food from the Beechwood Grill, so I'm going to have to go back.
It's going to be hard to beat this one, again, partly because you broke your ankle right down there. I
broke my ankle right over there, yeah.
And you had one of the greatest comebacks, so right. Anyway, so.
They say champions are built on 1,000 invisible mornings. That was a phrase we had at Michigan State, and you had to remind yourself of that when you're walking into the weight room at 5:15 in the morning and it's 10 degrees outside in February. But many, many, many afternoons in the January, February, March, throwing the football right here with my high school receivers, and so you really, did live it out here in terms of that champions are built on 1,000 invisible mornings.
So cool to have you here on this field. Hey, Nayeli, where'd you go? Do you have a question that you might want to ask Kirk?
Yeah.
We'll repeat it. Just say it so we can hear it, and then he'll repeat it.
What is something that you know now that you wish when you were my age?
That's a great question. She said, what is something you know now at 32 that I wished I knew when I was 18? Just first of all, a tremendous question. I need to give it some thought. But, I would say that playing for the long game. At 18 years old, I thought that, I had to have my whole life figured out at 19. And that if I had a bad day, that the world was ending. And I think now you look back with hindsight at 32 and you realize what it means to play for the long game. And you need to make decisions that say, okay, this decision may cost me something in the short term, but a decade from now it's the right decision. And I think the concept of delayed gratification and looking at the long game and how do I win the long game, many times I think when I was 18 and many young people, we want everything to happen right now. And so I would just try to have the long game in mind and think, is this the right decision when I'm 32, when I'm 42, when I'm 52? And if you can think like that, I think you'll separate yourself from your peers.
Thanks, Nayeli. That is a great question. Kind of puts a little pressure on me, honestly. So do you have any stories that stick out? There is an elephant in the room here, right? That there's a lot of, Craig, our executive director, and many other U of M fans here. And we've had Lloyd Carr and Jay Reimers and so give us this one. But, is there anything nice you could say about the University of Michigan?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, I don't get that many opportunities with a microphone to just sit back and kind of talk about MSU U of M, especially without a bunch of cameras around. So this is kind of a nice opportunity for me. But I remember my first start against U of M. So the first year I redshirted, we were up 10 points with 7 minutes to go and lost. That one hurt. And I remember I didn't play. I'm just redshirting. I walked off the field and I saw on the upper deck a blue and yellow sign. The guy pulled it up. It said, "Still arrogant." Okay, and I walked in. So then we go to the big house the next year. I didn't play in that game either. We won, but I can't take any credit for it. I didn't play. So we get to my first year starting in 09, and I remember calling my dad, and I said, Dad, this one means something this week. I was hyper aware that I'm going to come back to Holland, and I'm going to see these people the rest of my life. And there aren't a lot of times in college where you know that how you handle a day in college is going to affect the rest of your life. But I said, Dad, this Saturday is going to affect the rest of my life. And, we kind of talked through that and the pressure that comes with that. But here we are, talking about it years later at a steak and burger event. And I was aware that that might just happen. So we won that one in overtime by the skin of our teeth. And then we went down in 2010 to the big house. We're able to win that one. And then my senior year, we were able to win. And so I said to my dad at the end of the third one, you come out the stadium and you're now on the other side of it. He said, well, what do you think? I said, well, I started 3 times against Michigan. I just went 3-0. I'm going to walk the streets of 8th Street the rest of my life with my chest out and a whole lot of pride.
Deal with that.
So, but I will say, I said to my dad, I said, U of M may very well beat them in the future, but I can just say, hey, when I was there, 3-0, we'll take that. But
and they're a yardstick because they are amazing.
But I'll tell you what, if my son gets accepted to U of M, he's probably going to U of M. It's a pretty good school.
But we had our moment up here, so. So any favorite stories from Michigan State that you haven't shared yet, either a great victory or a tough loss that paid dues 10 years later?
Speaking of leadership, I remember I was just reminded of this the other day as I was looking at how I could better lead with the Vikings, and I was talking with my wife about it, actually on the plane flight back here yesterday. And I remember we played my junior year. So my sophomore year, we go 500. We did beat Michigan, but we didn't beat many other people. So going into my junior year, and I'm realizing it's kind of now or never. Your junior, senior year, you got to deliver. You went 500 last year. It's now or never. And we played our first 2 games, didn't play high quality opponents. So we won, but we didn't win convincingly. And our coach was pretty upset. We're 2-0. We got Notre Dame coming to town. And he told me to stay after the team meeting, just me and him. And he said, shut the door. And he just looked at me and he said, Kirk, where's the juice? He said, we've won, but we're not going to beat the Notre Dames of the world. And you got to bring it. And he said, you got to bring more than just playing quarterback. You got to bring juice. You got to bring personality. You got to bring energy. The guys feed off that. You got to bring it. You got to will us to victory. And I remember going home that night and kind of taking that challenge seriously and saying, all right, I'm not just going to go play quarterback here. I'm going to lead. And ended up sitting down with my roommate. We wrote a little chant that we were going to do before the games then to kind of get the guys going. And sure enough, we did that. The guys liked it. We got it rolling, went on a winning streak, ended up getting to number 5 in the country. Finished that year 11-1, won the Big Ten. And that was just kind of a fun moment that I look back on now and said that, people remember the 11-1, the Big Ten championship, the win against this or that. But honestly, that night where Coach D challenged me and said, up your leadership, turn the thermostat up. And then me and my roommate going back to our little apartment and saying, how are we going to do that and doing it, I think is really how you end up doing it, is you come up with those ways to lead and will people to play at a higher level than they otherwise would. And that's leadership.
Again, a bunch of us, we just love the leadership thing, and that's such a great story. Thank you. So I want to go to Jalen Grimes. He's gonna speak so loud, everybody's gonna hear him anyway. But Jalen, especially, bring the juice, dude. So
yeah,
right. Do you have a question for Kirk? By the way, Jalen was a candidate in the Youth of the Year this year, and I saw him up here giving a speech. He was pretty dang good. So, what question do you have for Kirk?
So why did you choose to go to Michigan State?
No one else wanted me. It was deduction. Looking back now, it's kind of a head scratcher. I would have loved for the U of M to come recruit me. It probably would have been an easy decision at the time, but they never knocked on my door. So at the time, partly because I broke my ankle my junior year, partly because I was undersized, partly because I wasn't playing at a big school, basically just kind of flew under the radar. Played my high school senior season, my entire season without a single scholarship offer. The day after my last high school game, we lost. The next day, went to Western Michigan. They offered me a scholarship. Toledo ended up offering me a scholarship around Christmas. Had to make a decision around February. Both schools told me if I don't pick one of them, they're going to pull the scholarship. So I'm looking at free college, and they're, sort of putting a gun to my head saying, you better decide. And I was waiting, and then Michigan State came in at the last minute and said, we're going to offer you. And they offered me. But they said, we're only going to offer you if like 7 other guys don't commit. And they went 0 for 7, so then I got the offer. And the rest is
I got
history.
engaged. I'm just, not really. There's 7 other guys, but no.
But then you married up, so that's a good
I
goal.
definitely overpunted my coverage, if you know So on a good day, well, first of all, do you ever see how far you can throw the football?
Yeah, oh yeah, I like to test it. And as I get older, I like to test it to make sure I can still do it.
So anyone want to make a guess? You have a number, right, in mind? Who wants to take a guess at what the number is? How much?
I've got a ball right here.
No. I don't want to get a call from Minnesota Vikings saying, why did you blow out his shoulder without a proper warm-up? Who's young man back there?
He's 2 for 2.
73.
73 yards in the air.
He believes in me too much. I'm flattered. Should I tell him?
Yeah.
About 65. You're in the ballpark.
But here's the deal. He'll hit a dime.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, that's certainly the goal. You got to have the accuracy to go with it.
Yeah, beautiful. So this leadership thing, kind of when did all that start? And what would you say are 1 or 2 or 3 nuggets for those that do love the leadership thing that you'd go, here's beliefs I have. So I have a friend, Doug Conant, who says everyone needs to have their own leadership philosophy, their own leadership model. I love that. What would yours be? And when did all that start?
That's a great question. Football kind of brings it out maybe more than the other sports. For whatever reason, playing the quarterback position, the nature of the sport is so combative. It's certainly not military, but it has that feel at times if you're taking territory when you play football and moving up and down the field. And so it kind of brings it out of you a little bit. So I was challenged to think about what it looks like even going back to high school. But college certainly became very real, and you had to live it out, and in the pros even more so. My dad certainly has had a major impact on me and how I think about leadership, and he's spoken into it so much through my years. But the way my dad always defined it, and I would adopt the way he approached it, was that leadership is influence. So in one word, it's influence. You're having influence on somebody in some way, and he would define leadership as leadership is taking other people where they want to go but can't get there on their own. If they can get there on their own, they don't need a leader. And so you have to step in to help them get to where they want to go. And then he would go on to say that by the nature of that definition, being a leader is selfless. Because you're taking other people where they want to go.
And I assume they always want to go there, right?
Yeah, sometimes they don't know they need to go there, and you've got to take them. So that's where leadership can get really challenging. But the nature of waking up in the morning and saying, I got to look at life not through a mirror thinking about myself, but through a window looking at how can I influence and impact other people. It's just not human nature. Yeah. And so right away off the bat, people wake up in the morning and we naturally think not like a leader. And so you have to kind of rewire your brain to say, I'm going to wake up and think about how I can impact and influence other people and get them where they want to go. So
there have been times, and I've followed your career, not so much in high school as a Spartan fan, and we came from Lansing and only been here 30 years, so we're still newcomers. But certainly followed you at MSU. And it just seemed like many steps in your career, you were the underdog. Yeah. You didn't get recruited right away. You weren't promised a starting position. You had to win it out. And then you got, drafted fourth round after a great quarterback. And so how does this underdog thing work for you? Because
works pretty well.
You've done incredibly well. But how does that, so talk to me about it.
There's something in me that when you set me off in light of, when you kind of overlook me, you kind of wake a sleeping giant a little bit. And so to some degree, it's been to my betterment that people overlook me, because it brings out a side of me that sometimes when people don't, that side of me can kind of stay dormant. And so when you overlook me, it kind of riles me up and maybe brings the best out in me. But I also feel that the Lord has allowed my steps, going back to breaking an ankle my junior year, the Lord has allowed my path to be one of, Kirk, at no point in this journey are you going to think you did it. Over and over and over again, I'm going to remind you that I did it.
Nice.
And that's been a powerful reminder throughout my journey.
So cool.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping when you do win this Super Bowl that you might go back to the moment when I let you know you're sitting next to a state champion, and it's like you're a big deal, but she's Youth of the Year of Michigan.
That's right.
So I kind of overlooked you a little bit. Hopefully that'll spur you up into.
There you go. I'm looking for anything at this point. We got to win this year, so any motivation.
It's hard to overlook you these days, I have to say, with your statistics and yeah. Do you have a favorite quarterback in the NFL other than you?
You know, I still watch myself. I don't think I'm very good, so I certainly wouldn't put myself at the top. But you know, what's funny is the guys that I'm playing against now are the guys I grew up watching. You know, I remember being on my couch in 5th, 6th grade and watching Drew Brees throw a touchdown pass to win the Big Ten championship for Purdue. I remember watching Peyton Manning at Tennessee, Tom Brady at Michigan, and then I remember in 7th grade, I'm down the street here watching the Super Bowl and watched Tom Brady win his first Super Bowl. So you go out there, you know, in December, and we played Tom Brady, and I'm shaking his hand after the game, and it's just, you know, those are the guys you watch. Those are the guys you emulated when you're out here throwing with your buddies in high school. It's Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning.
So cool.
And then you're playing against them this past year, Peyton a few years ago. So, you know, that's kind of a unique deal. I'm hoping I can play as long as those guys, you know, because they've had 20-year careers. But, you know, it's a little odd when the guys you looked up to, you now have to find a way to go beat.
Well, and thinking of Drew Brees and the Saints, so how far was that pass?
Oh, man, I don't know.
Tell him what I'm talking about. And
What are you saying?
Oh, well, I think when you guys beat the Saints, wasn't there a really long, sweet pass right into the pocket?
Yeah, I don't know. That's probably 50 yards. I'm not sure. I haven't counted it.
We'll
but
ask the young man.
again, the key is that you drop it in the bucket, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to hit that
Beautiful
spot.
pass.
Yeah, that was a big throw in my career.
Yeah. Beautiful. See, there you go, 57. Farther than you said you could throw.
67.
Oh. So Greg Woods. Is Greg Woods here? I see. Another Youth of the Year candidate for 2021. I remember your speech. You should be up here interviewing him, but you got a nice chance right now to ask him a question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you kind of like Naili said, but I'll think of a different one. So you talked about a lot of like ups and downs in your life and your career. Has there ever been a moment like where you thought about like hanging it up sometimes, but like what makes you keep going? Like what drives you every day to be the best person that you can be?
And you'll let them know his question, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes. So he just asked, have you ever had a moment where you thought about hanging it up, and what drives you? Great questions. Questions I do ask myself too. And yeah, there have been some low moments. You know, there have been some moments where going back to college where I thought, you know, am I going to keep doing this? Do I want to keep doing this? And in the pros too, where you're just like, boy, I don't know. I remember my 3rd year in the pros, 2014, I got benched. And I remember having some thoughts on the sideline of, you know, maybe this is it. And even the next year, my 7th game of that season, my first year really starting the whole season, my 7th game, it was really the game. If we didn't win, I probably wasn't going to have my job. And we get down 24-0. And I had just fumbled, got hit, fumbled. They returned it for a touchdown. I'm getting booed in our home stadium. I'm walking off the field pulling grass out of my face mask. And I sit down on the bench and I thought, man, selling insurance back in Holland doesn't sound so bad right now. And this is the middle of a game, right? So, you know, you say a prayer there, Lord, you know, you've led me to this moment. I really believe to the core of my being that the will of God will never lead you where the grace of God cannot keep you. And so I said, God, I really need your grace. And we ended up winning that game 31-30. And I was so set off because there was obviously so much coming against me over those weeks leading up to that game and the first half of that game that I'm walking through the tunnel on the way back to the locker room and I look at somebody and I yelled, "You like that?" And that's kind of always stuck with me ever since. So,
stuck with a whole bunch of people.
But life's a roller coaster. Life's a roller coaster. To answer your question, you have the lowest of lows there right around halftime. And at the end of the game, only 2 hours later, you're saying something that sticks with you the rest of your life and you're riding high. And so my point is tough times don't last, tough people do. And what you have to do is go back out there. You know, what you don't do is come off the sideline with them booing you and sit on the bench and say, I'm done, I quit. What you do is you say, doggone it, if it's going to be 31-0, I'm going to go back out there and just keep going. And I've learned, you know, when you don't quit, you know, tough times don't last, tough people do.
That's awesome. You ever been hit really hard?
Yeah, a few times. Alabama's the one that always comes to mind.
And what's that like? We've not taken a hit like that, most likely, right? So what's that like, and how dumb are you to get back up and go at it again?
Dumb, pretty dumb.
So help me understand.
It's like being in a car accident once a week. When you wake up the next morning, your neck hurts, your back hurts, but by about Thursday you'll be feeling better again, so that then you can do it again on Sunday.
So some of you have had many children. It might be similar to that as well, right? It's like, I'm never doing this again. Well, then, whatever.
The ones that you realize you're not healing from are the ones you get a little nervous about.
Yeah.
Most of the time it clears, but that one against Alabama, I play golf. I love to play golf, but to this day, that one against Alabama, I still feel it in my golf swing a little bit.
Do you remember who hit you?
Courtney Upshaw.
Okay.
I remember we're standing there at halftime. We're down 28-0 to Alabama. They were just better than us. I tell people, if you've seen the movie Space Jam, it's like playing the Monstars, except we didn't have Michael Jordan. And I'm standing there on the sideline, and Coach D'Antonio on the headset's talking to one of our coaches upstairs. He doesn't know I can hear, and he's looking at their defensive line, and all of them are going to be draft picks. And he said, I'll tell you what, that 57's a good-looking dude. He said, we don't have anybody that looks like him. And that's where recruiting helps.
Well, I'm glad that it's only golf that is right now.
A lot of prayers going up for protection, because I'm very aware that I don't look the part, and if they hit me just right, I'm not going to last very long. So we're praying for protection.
And you may know this, you may not, but I've been on your prayer list for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody here would be invited every Sunday he plays, not to win.
I may not be the best quarterback in the NFL. I promise you I'm the most prayed for quarterback in the NFL. I promise that.
And Holland's a great place to make that happen. So, Ebony, our 2020 Youth of the Year and cellist, also a great interview questioner. Do you have a question nice and loud for Kirk?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of Greg's. You deal with, you have to be in front of a lot of people. So how do you deal with that pressure of this crowd watching you, and how has that changed from high school to college to the pros, and how you deal with that?
Yeah, the stadium here looks a little different than the one in Minnesota. Little different setting. It's still such a rush, whether it's a couple thousand, your high school buddies are in the stands watching. I mean, that's a rush, and it's the same when you're playing in front of 70,000 or a couple million on TV. But there are moments when you're standing there in the tunnel, and they're about to announce you to run onto the field, and you look up, and there's not an empty seat in the whole place. And the fire's going, and the drums are going, and the crowd's doing the skull chant, and you have that thought where you're just like, this is bigger than me. And quite frankly, this may be a little too big for me. And that's where, again, you say, God, I need your grace. I need your undeserved favor right now to help me through this, because, again, you've brought me to this moment. It's a lot bigger than what I can handle, but I'm going to go forward trusting that you got me. And really every football game for me is an act of faith, to go out there and say, hey, I'm on display. There's nowhere to hide here. The ball's in my hand, good, bad, or ugly. And so it's been a great faith journey for me to be on that football field every week.
You've done a few of these kind of public speaking events, I'm guessing.
Yeah, a few through the years. Q&A is always preferred.
Is there something you usually really enjoy sharing with the crowd that you haven't yet with this crowd?
I think we've covered so much. I just keep going back to the fact that it's hard for me to talk about my story, what makes me who I am, the many blessings that have come on my football journey without just emphasizing my faith. And I just remember, I'll probably tear up here because it gets pretty emotional, but when I broke my ankle over there, I remember coming home from the doctor and thinking I couldn't play college football. I thought, if you don't get recruited your junior year, I'm already not going to get noticed here. You don't get recruited your junior year, I'm probably not playing college football. And I remember calling my dad and telling him that, and he said, Kirk, you don't know that. He said, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him. He will direct your steps. And that didn't mean I was going to have football success, but He will direct your steps. And so I just said, I'm going to trust Him. And here we go.
Praise God. Well, what a treat. I can't tell you what a treat it is to ask you questions. For us all, get a little piece of Kirk Cousins tonight. Let's give him a... Thank you.
Thanks, Rodger. Great job. Thank you.